Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. As we get ready to close out the year and bring in the new with 2019, we're going to take a look at another Seeker jet. This is the 1985 Decepticon Warrior Ramjet. Ramjet would be released in 1985. He would also be available in 1986. He would be discontinued in 1987, and we would not get a replacement for him. Ramjet is part of the second wave of Seekers, like Dirge and Thrust, and they were depicted in the cartoon as coneheads to help stand out amongst the other Seekers. Although the instruction manual still suggests that, like the originals, you fold the cone back to give them the regular head. Now, of course, how you'd position your Ramjet for your collection, that's up to you entirely. Because you can say that that way was right, like this, I mean. Or you can say this is right and still be correct. I'm going with this because that's how he was in the cartoon. That's how a lot of the media pictures him. So, he's a conehead. Unfortunately, though, since like all of the other Seeker jets that were done in 84 and 85, they copied the same body style. So, unfortunately, that means Ramjet only has articulation in his arms. So you can rotate his arms predominantly all the way. His wing kind of gets in the way from allowing it to go full circle, but if you shift it a bit, it can go full circle. And of course, it does bend outwards about that far. And that's about it for his articulation, sorry to say. Now let's transform Ramjet. And of course, to do that, like all of the other Seekers, we got to take off all the accessories. His weapons, his fists, the wings. Stay up there, boy. And of course, tail fins down here at his feet. Sticker fell off. We'll just get rid of that. Alrighty. To transform him, if he'd keep his head up for a moment, we'll start by shifting the head downward like so, bending it a bit, since it bends on this little stalk here. And then we'll shift it through with the cockpit. Connect the nose up with it. And before we lock it into place, we rotate the arms down and fold them back. And we can snap the cockpit into place. And then we come down here and we fold up his feet. Of course, in this little hole here underneath his head, we'll attach the front landing gear so that he'll stay upright. And next, we'll get a wing. We put a tail fin here on top of his engines. And of course, underneath there, we'll put one of his missiles. And then we just attach them to these black holes here along his leg. So we shift them to the side. Of course, do the same thing with the other wing. And then we have Ramjet here in his alternate mode, which is a modified F-15 Eagle. She appears modified to be an extra fast jet, since he has a couple of extra engines here on his wings. So that would give him some incredible boosting power. And despite his name being Ramjet, F-15s don't have ramjets. Just thought I'd throw that out as a little bit of trivia for you folks. Something this channel's slowly becoming famous for. Something you can remember if you happen to meet Alex Trebek and you're on Jeopardy. As for swooshability for a jet, it's not bad. It's pretty good, actually. And there we go. Ramjet's alternate mode. Let's take a look at Ramjet's loose parts here. We'll start with the part that he and all the other Seekers, save for Cyclonus and Scourge, have, and that's the front landing gear. Just a stalk of black plastic and 2 metal wheels. As you can see, it's very thin and tiny, so it's easy to lose. And next, of course, we have Ramjet's wings. They match the color for thrust, because I did recall being at a flea market and somebody had put these wings on a thrust toy, trying to sell it as complete, and it's kind of, no, that's not complete. You've just cobbled somebody together. And of course, here's the underside of the wings. And of course, we have 2 tail fins. There's only a sticker on the one side. The other side, they're blank. Of course, be careful with them. They're thin plastic. And of course, you got the 2 hands. This is the right hand. And here's the left hand. They're the black fists that all 3 of these guys shared. Dirge and Thrust also have these type of fists, as did Thundercracker. So, getting black fists shouldn't be too difficult. And then, of course, lastly, he has 2 of these big missiles, which the instruction manual calls them cluster bombs. There's nothing really about them, so... And those are Ramjet's loose parts. Moving right along now, we'll take a look at Ramjet's instructions. And right here I have the Canadian set of his instructions. Mainly because it's what I could get at the time that I bought them. I'm sure if I looked really hard now, I could probably get American version, but this set does just fine. You can see a fully equipped Ramjet. And right here they show you how to make him fully equipped. And of course, to convert him into the robot, we take everything off. And flip everything around. And take a look at how to finish him off. Kind of like this picture, this drawn picture of him with the guy with those big bombs pointing right at you. Just looks kind of good. And then, of course, they have here how to do the rub sign, save your robot points, and study the tech specs in English and in French. And moving right along now, we've got his tech spec card. This is the American version, so don't try to look for more. It's got a nice picture of him done in with a purple background. This would have matched the front of the box. It lists him as a Decepticon, and it gives his name as Ramjet. His function is Warrior. As we've said earlier, Warrior is their equivalent of a basic soldier. And his motto is, if it flies, crash it. Mid-air collisions are his specialty. Makes little difference if target is opponent or not. He'll crash into it just for fun. A terror without equal in the skies. The skies are my castle and I like to live alone. His nose module can withstand impact of 3-foot thick concrete at 1,500 miles per hour. Flies as fast as Mach 2.8. Carries cluster bombs. Too many crashes can injure him, particularly internal mechanics. This is an interesting bit, as it's pointed out in the More Than Meets the Eye guides. It states that there is a glitch in Ramjet regarding his pain sensors, which is what causes him to not be able to feel pain like that. So that gives him this masochistic feeling of invincibility, and thus his desire to ram anything that he can. The only problem is like that states, if he does it too much, it can injure him, especially in some of his internal areas that are not as well shielded or kept in place like his exterior armor is. So he can inadvertently damage something precious, like his transformation matrix, if he's not careful. There are times, though, Ramjet is dragged back to Decepticon headquarters looking pretty rough for the wear, meaning he probably should have asked for some help on an opponent rather than just ramming into it and then admitting that he couldn't take it. At any rate, let's get the decoder here over the grid and let's take a look at his vitals. It lists his strength as 8, his intelligence is 5, his speed and endurance are both 9, his rank is 5, his courage is 8, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 6. So he does have a few good things going for him, like his speed and endurance and courage, but beyond that, he's not much better than your average Transformer. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Ramjet? Well, I'm going to be a little biased, and I'm going to say that I do kind of like Ramjet. I mean, granted, yes, I'm not too thrilled about his ability to ram into other things. I mean, after all, that does harken things out of 9/11, so I can imagine that if Ramjet is released in newer waves of Transformers, a lot of that will be written out of his character, understandably. But there is always, in some of these groups, there's always the one guy that feels he's invincible and can take on anything, and will often do so mainly just due to the fact that he needs to prove to the world that he can do it. That's where Ramjet fits in. And granted, while I'm not necessarily a fan of those kinds of characters, it is a trope that long lasted within the 80s. It's died out. more or less in the modern era. Whether that's good or bad, that's up for debate. Feel free to debate that in the comments section. But it is one that was rampaging throughout the 80s, and Ramjet did fit that bill for the Decepticons, being their tough guy, because he could literally back it up with that. They naturally, of course, downplayed that in the cartoon series, and that was probably a smart move in hindsight. I mean, yeah, back then they probably should have written in where he did that more often, since it was mentioned on his bio, but in a lot of ways it was probably a good thing that they didn't, as that means we can show the cartoon to our children and not evoke bad thoughts about what has been seen or discussed of 9/11 in the intervening years since then. Then again, our kids see the stuff we grew up with in the 80s, they'll probably think we were as whacked out as what they say we were. But what do they know? At any rate, the toy itself, it's not bad. I mean, granted, yes, it's cheap. I can say that for Dirge, I can say that for Thrust. Heck, we could say that for Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker. Well, more on Skywarp, because he was the odd one out. But it is nice to see that they were able to come up with something somewhat different. I mean, yeah, in 1985, Hasbro was scrambling to get Transformer toys onto the shelves. And that did lead to many of the higher-priced Autobot and Decepticon toys were basically just a reissue of somebody that had been released prior. So yeah, while that does lack in originality, they at least did their part to try to make the toys as different as they could. And I think they did an okay job here with Ramjet. He does look kind of imposing in his robot mode, especially with those large missiles being his weapons. Those look pretty good compared to the little rinky-dink machine guns that Dirge has. And Thrust came with the same weapons that had been used by Starscream and such before him, so this isn't too bad. The only real problem with Ramjet is the white body. As you can imagine, finding one in good condition is rather difficult to do. But if you can find one like mine that's in pretty good shape, definitely go for him. I'm going to put Ramjet about in the middle tier. He falls short of being in the top tier due to being a copy. And I also know there'd be a lot of people that would be upset if I put something that likes to collide with things as a top tier toy. So I'm going to cave this time. Because in reality, I do think he is just barely capable of being a top tier character, but I think I'll cave with the others and go with a middle tier. Because beyond his near invulnerability, he really doesn't have all that much to offer. And that concludes my review of the 1985 Decepticon Warrior Ramjet. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, new viewers, to hit that subscribe button down below so you can join our ranks, and ring the bell so you'll be notified of all future videos. Please also consider sharing your thoughts for Ramjet in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701, wishing all of you a very happy new year. I look forward to seeing you again in 2019, and I'll catch you all later.